Hello, today we're going to talk about money markets and emergency funds. A couple of quick lessons on it. The first one is there's two purposes for a money market account. One is emergency fund, which we'll talk about in a moment. The second one is as a holding tank, as a place to temporarily put money if you're either unsure of what it is that you want to do with it. Sometimes that happens when there's an inheritance or someone has a severance package or win the lottery or maybe they sold a business. Or also, even if you know what you're going to do, but you don't need it yet. Maybe you're saving up for a huge down payment on a very large mortgage, but it's coming 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So essentially, it's a holding tank. It's a great place to put it. You could just put it in checking and savings, but I like the idea of it being a little bit separate, psychologically being separate from this easily accessible checking and savings account, especially nowadays with everything being online. You can still get to the money market relatively quickly, but it's not quite, you don't walk up to an ATM machine and withdraw the money. So one holding tank, second one's emergency fund. Let's talk about emergency funds in general. There's a lot of different theories on emergency funds. I believe, number one, I don't think it matters all that much. I wouldn't get too caught up. I see too many advisors trying to nitpick and get too, you got to have 6.3 months worth of emergency and it should be in this account. And, this ING savings pays a little bit more. At the amount of monies we're talking about and the fact that emergencies are unpredictable anyway, trying to fine tune to an extreme extent the both amount and where you should put it, I think is superfluous and is a waste of time and is focusing energy on the wrong things. So I tell clients, I tell them anyway, I'm a big believer in simplicity. I keep things very simple. Sometimes just being simple is a competitive advantage in and of itself. So for example, I don't even have a savings account. I've got a checking account and that's it. It's with a bank called Simple Bank, been around for quite a while. It's one of the first online banks. I love them. They're great. They're called Simple, because they believe in simplicity. So, and the way they work, and this is getting to the emergency fund, is you have one account, checking account. You actually earn a tiny bit of interest, but who cares? It doesn't matter. And it's kind of like Gmail. All your money is in one bucket. But then you can label money, like you might say, this is my, savings fund. This is my buying a new refrigerator fund in 6 months. This is, you can label as many, they just call them goals. You can label as many goals as you want and you can attach money to it. Or I should say you can attach the label to X amount of dollars. You can say, okay, $10,000 are in my simple checking account, but these 3,000 are earmarked for vacation in next May, as an example. The difference is in real life, all 10,000 is still sitting there. If you wrote a check for 9,000, it would go through. It just means that your goal now would be smaller. So you're not physically moving the money around. So it has a lot of it's just like Gmail, where all your mail is in one place, all your emails actually in one place, but you just label it. This is, jokes. This is jokes. This is emails from dad. This is political. And this one has all three because it's a political joke from dad. But physically, all the mail's in the same bucket. You're just labeling it differently than you're searching by label. It's the same thing with the simple account. And what this has to do with emergency fund is, as the way I do it, is I have X amount of dollars, about 20 grand, maybe a little bit less now, but that's earmarked for emergency. But physically, it's just all still part of my overall account balance. I just label it, and I can adjust that label or take dollars out. It's the wrong word to use it because you're not moving money, but unlabeling certain dollars. Either way, it's kind of a side note story here, but the point is what I tell people, look, do you have a savings account? Okay, do you have a checking account? Yes. Okay, if you have both, great. Then here's what I want you to do. Your savings account, starting today, is your emergency account. Everything else goes in checking. Okay? And we call that a soft, this is what I call, I've been calling this for years, that's called a soft emergency because you can get to it literally within minutes. If you really need to, even in most normal banks, you've used an ATM card, you can get to the savings, right? Or in my case, it's even simpler because the money is physically in the same place. This is where the money market comes in. What I believe is that now you have a second emergency fund, which I call the hard emergency fund. And that's a money market. I don't care about the interest. I don't care if there's some kind of highfalutin fancy savings account with some online bank that actually pays more than the money market. It's not about the interest. That's not the purpose of the account. If you're looking for interest, go in a mutual fund. The purpose of the account, the reason I like money markets is because they're a little bit separated from easy, super quick access. You can get to them if you need to, like an emergency. And the idea is, I've got an emergency fund in the money market. I believe that's another thing about the money. I don't know how much people need. I would say between 10 and 25,000 for most middle class families. Even for someone that's wealthy, I've got a client that's pretty wealthy. He doesn't have more than 100,000. Okay, and percentage-wise, he should have way more. If I'm saying middle class should have 25, he should have way more than 100. But at some point, it becomes stupid. First of all, in a modern day and age where most anyone that even has that kind of money has access to credit cards, and frankly, that's what people end up doing anyway. That's why even like my heart emergency, I haven't touched it in years because when I have had something come up, frankly, I just used used a credit card and then paid it off. And I'm sure all of you did the same thing. But I do tell clients, especially clients that are a little bit conservative, say, listen, have a two-step money market. That's kind of the point of this whole story. Have a two-step money market. The first one's like a firewall that can easily be broken, but it's still a firewall. So whether you have something like I do, where you have all the money in one account, but you've kind of earmarked a certain amount for emergency, or whether you have a separate checking and savings, and the savings is your emergency, you go there first. And once you've used it, as soon as you're back on your feet, your immediate goal is to refund that and bring that back up to whatever the level is you feel comfortable. And then you have the second one, which we call the hard emergency, which is in a money market. And I would say minimum 10. I don't care who you are, should be at least 10. That's your goal, build to 10, and probably not more than 25. Maybe 50, but I still think now you are losing out on interest. But whatever the number is, I don't get caught up in that. I would definitely recommend more than 10. And you never touch that. Like your goal is to go through your entire life and never touch it. This is not when you want to go buy your Tesla. This is not even when your kid is, needs tuition. That's my opinion. This is like you break your leg and the health insurance won't cover it. This is like hardcore. Like you got to pretend you almost never have it. Now, the one in your savings, a little different. And really, so it's that simple. So it's just the two-step process, soft emergency, which is easily accessible, but you do earmark it for emergency. You still don't ever touch it. And then the hard emergency is money market fund. And the second purpose of the money market fund is not that money market fund, but in general, because people ask those questions. So I kind of answer two questions in this training that are related but are not the same, which is what are the two purposes of the money market, and then how do emergency funds work. And I keep it really very simple. I don't want to get super caught up. I don't think most people have the wherewithal and the savings capability to save up 6 months worth of living expenses in an emergency fund. I know Nick Murray says that, and I think conceptually it makes sense, but most clients, they're so far behind on retirement, they got to start putting more towards retirement. So there you have it.